I saw this last night, and I thought it was important to point out because we have to understand, in order to defeat an enemy, and I think at this point some of these people are our enemy, we have to understand where they're coming from and how they manipulate certain information, right? We just talked about censorship and why censorship is wrong and why it hurts you, the person who, especially marginalized people. Censorship period is wrong, but it's a very slippery slope into fascism, right? And so because YouTube's been censoring everything on COVID, everything on elections, everything like that, people have found other outlets. So there's this new outlet called Rumble, and I haven't done a deep dive into it. It's majority of the people that are on there are on the right, because a lot of those people were censored off Twitter and YouTube, etc. But the way she frames it, the way Anna Kasparian frames it in this video, she's arguing for censorship. She's calling any sort of censorship on COVID is okay because she says it's disinformation. And she alludes to the fact that we need to stop disinformation from happening. But again, who is in charge of the things you hear? Who's in charge of disinformation? Like who is there to say, hey, I am Susan Wojcicki. I am the CEO of YouTube. And so I'm going to decide for you, because you're too stupid, what is medical misinformation and what isn't. And I think that's wrong, because I think that's a predator class 1%er, and they're going to look at for their interests, not for our interests. So I wanted to go over this video and pretty much stop and start it and debunk it, because here our Anna Kasparian is going after Tulsi Gabbard and Glenn Greenwald for joining Rumble. You don't have to like Tulsi Gabbard or Glenn Greenwald, but to advocate for censorship is my issue. So let's begin.
Tulsi Gabbard and Glenn Greenwald have apparently signed a deal with a social media platform known as Rumble. Now, there are many of these platforms popping up all over the place, but Rumble is a platform that's been around since 2013. It didn't really grow in popularity until places like YouTube, for instance, started doing away with content that spread disinformation on things like the coronavirus pandemic. And so people who wanted to publish disinformation decided to flow into alternative social media platforms like Rumble. And now it's growing. Their user base has grown quite a bit. And now we're hearing about what they're doing to bolster their credibility. So the Toronto-based upstart Rumble said that it has struck deals with former US Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, the journalist firebrand Glenn Greenwald, and others who had committed to posting their videos first to the site. Now, the company declined to provide any of the financial details, but Glenn Greenwald said the top creator's year-long contract will pay in the mid-range 6 figures. It's quite a bit of money. So they're offering these massive deals, and the whole point is, look, you provide us well-produced, high-quality content, you get this money, we're all good. But what sets Rumble apart from other social media platforms? Well, Rumble has emerged over the last year as one of the most prominent video sites for right-wing viewers and provocateurs, and it is seeking to bolster its image as a new online home for those who claim they've been censored by big tech. Because when you have over 1 million followers on Twitter, and when you have a giant following in general, and you get to run your mouth literally all day, every day, you are in fact being censored.
Okay, I can stop here. So as you can see, she's sharing excerpts from the Washington Post, who did a really scathing article of Rumble, pretty much saying it was a site for conspiracy theories and for misinformation to spread. She's also alluding to the fact that Tulsi Gabbard, who has over 1 million followers on Twitter, and she has been anti-censorship. I mean, she was the only person who ran for office that was advocating for free speech and whistleblowers and press freedoms. Do I agree with her silence on Israel-Palestine? No, that's one of the things that I think is a complete and total no. I think that's terrible. But as far as censorship goes, She was like the only one. And Glenn Greenwald has also been a huge advocate against censorship, exposing the duplicity of the squad, etc. And so, ironically enough, neither of them have really talked about the virus and all of that stuff, right? But she's framing it here. Anna Kasparian is framing it like, you know, if you're talking about medical misinformation and COVID, people who think they've been censored by big tech, there is no thinking. It is a fact. Big tech is working with our government to censor people. They admitted they have a division in the post office. They have the what is it? I forget the specific name, but there's other state agencies that have multiple divisions with pre-crime. There is a domestic violent extremist watch on everybody now. Anybody that's an anti-government or an activist. There's, you know, the NSA is obviously continuously watching us. We saw the whole thing with Tucker Carlson and all of that. So we know that this is happening. It's not somebody's imagination. It's not people exaggerating, and it's not just because you outright say, let's say somebody says, quote, you know, COVID is a hoax. Let's say somebody says that. That's not why people are getting shut down. People are getting shut down like this doctor that we showed yesterday, right? For voicing his medical opinion on an issue. Then you have people getting shut down for talking about what happened during the elections. Like us, we got our videos taken down. That is not misinformation. And who is Anna to be the gatekeeper of what is misinformation and what isn't? Once you allow that, it's going to expand and get worse. So she's framing it like they did something wrong for trying to go to another platform, just like we're going to Rokfin. And she later mentions Rokfin, which is what I wanted to get to. Did you have anything to say, Jonny? Okay.
It's just the fact of the matter. Like, Glenn Greenwald is definitely censored on Twitter. So he's got to go to Rumble. He has no choice but to accept that deal in the mid six figures in order to publish his content there. I'm sure that it's all about being a principled anti-censorship journalist. But I don't know, maybe you have a different perspective, Lance. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if anyone from Rumble is watching, just know that for a price, I will reverse everything I'm about to say on TYT. So just email me. I'm sure the detail will pop up at some point. On the side note, I've actually spoken to some of the people who are like designing and coding a lot of these alt sites. Like there's another one called Odyssey, and then there's one called Rokfin as well. And there's a lot of these kind of like alternative streaming sites, which I have nothing against. I think it's unusual that the left is really scared to.
Yeah, so he mentions Rokfin. He didn't say it right, but it's Rokfin, right? And she talks about the money real quick. We can let some of I want to hear what she says next, but she talked about the money. What about the money that TYT is paid to literally propagandize lies to people? I mean, people, like, what about that? Like, what? She's so rich of her to talk about money when TYT has millions of dollars in funding, and I have not seen Anna anywhere on the ground, or Cenk, or any of their little reporters anywhere near on the ground, period, at all. With a micro budget, we somehow managed to do it. I just want to point that out.
Them, and when I've spoken to the people who code these sites, they've always said they get very rapid adoption from the right. And I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, under current discourse, what is considered polite to do in the Overton window, like you can't really be outwardly transphobic on Twitter anymore. You can't be outwardly transphobic on YouTube anymore. So if you wanted to espouse those kind of ideas, you'd have to find something alternative. So that's maybe why some of them pivot. But there's also
that is why.
That's
100% why.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. But I think
on that, sure, there are people that are on the right that want to be racist and anti-LGBTQ and all of that. Sure, that exists. That's not why people like Greenwald and Tulsi Gabbard and other people like us join alternative sites. We join it because we're being censored from speaking truth to power by people whose livelihood depends on those lies perpetuating. This is what I call disingenuous narrative management reporting, because she has to protect the mainstream media, Google, YouTube, because that's her livelihood. And if people still by now don't know who TYT are, well, here's a great example. The left isn't joining these platforms to spew hatred for marginalized people. The left is joining these platforms cautiously, and they are cautious because we get a lot of backlash for joining any platform that's not YouTube. Ironically, for joining any platform that's not censoring us. And so they're doing this because we're not allowed to say, I mean, we have to go on Rokfin to talk about the virus. We're not allowed to talk about anything of really like super anything against the national security state, anything against war. All of those things that have been long demonetized for us whenever we had monetization, right? They want to stop us from doing what we're doing. And so we're telling YouTube, screw you. We're not going to be stopped. You're trying to strangle us monetarily. So we're going to go on Rokfin and we're going to talk about things that we want to talk about. That's why you have people from everywhere now coming on Rokfin, because they see what time it's up. Pretty soon, you're not going to be able to say anything remotely truthful on YouTube. And more people are finding out that the best videos and the best content isn't even on YouTube anymore, because YouTube is censoring the hell out of every truthful thing. So, yeah, just let it play, Johnny.
There might also be that idea that there's a lot of people on the left who are also afraid of entering those ecosystems in the first place because they're already filled with all these ghouls. Like, why would I go there? It's already loaded. Like anytime like I upload to like Odyssey, for example, I don't read the comments because it's all just about what a soy. I don't know what I can say during daytime right now. I'll just leave it at soy. So I'm just a soy. I'm just literally a piece of soy, and it'll just say that and it'll pile up. So that might be another reason why the early adoption has been a problem. What I would be curious to know when it comes to Rumble and they're reaching out to try and diversify, because I just looked at their catalog. It is overwhelmingly like Donald Trump Jr., all the way over to like Mike Cernovich, so very prominent right-wing figures. Are they trying to reach out to what they consider to be more centrist voices to balance that out?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't see any big names on the left as part of this deal or as part of this effort to bolster its online presence. And what set Rumble apart from some of the more traditional or long-standing social media platforms is the fact that they will not censor disinformation pertaining to things like coronavirus. And in fact, that's what Glenn Greenwald himself cited in his reasoning for wanting to join in this deal. So, the site does ban racism and hate speech, but has contrasted itself with the Google-owned YouTube by refusing to remove medical misinformation, including those casting doubt on vaccines during a pandemic that is surging in many states and has killed more than 4 million people around the world. Now, Gabbard and Greenwald have expanded.
Okay, again, I can't say too much on this particular thing, but you notice how she is once again quoting the Washington Post, right? And notice how they frame it, who are casting doubt on vaccines during this pandemic that has killed all these people, blah, 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 right? That is disingenuous, because you're not showing the other side as to what is actually killing people and the lack of health care and the other ailments, the other medicines that could have been used to help people. You're not talking about that, right? And this is why I believe Anna is paid to be a narrative manager for the status quo, because she is doing the opposite of what we're doing. We're trying to inform people on the truth. And so this is why we have to go on Rokfin if we're going to mention anything related to the virus, because we're going to be shut down if not, right? She is maligning the people doing that, the people who are asking questions, the people who refuse censorship. She is maligning those people as conspiracy theorists, as people that are speaking and hurting and harming the vast majority of Americans, right? And not only is she doing that, she's denouncing the fact that they're even going on another platform because they're not welcome. They're like, the Washington Post here is admitting that these people remove medical misinformation, but we know that what they consider that is very broad, and it could be anything that they disagree with or that simply threatens them. So this is what I wanted to show about Anna and TYT, is that they're there to pretty much narrative manage for the status quo, the accepted narrative. There's nothing different from TYT and MSNBC, really, when you're talking about issues like this. When you're talking about issues like Assange, the national security state, the virus, there's literally no difference. She's not challenging the status quo. She's embracing it. She's in fact saying you must also embrace it, or you are a conspiracy theorist and pushing medical misinformation, or you're a right winger. Look at you going into a platform with a bunch of right wingers. The way I look at going into a platform with a bunch of right wingers is, hey, maybe these people will finally hear some leftists that might agree with them on a couple things, but then is also going to educate them on something different. That is what we try to do here. That's what we did when it came to the elections. That's what I've done when it comes to imperialism and foreign policy. Even when I talk to people who are Republicans on a day-to-day basis, or people who don't really know what we know, there's a way to talk to people like they're not freaking idiots, because what a lot of these people on the left media do is that they put a camera in front of some Trump supporter, or they call them anti-vaxxers, and they frame them as Nazis, as fascists, and all of that. But there's no conversation, there's no back and forth, there's no dialogue. It's just an attempt to ridicule a person. And I don't care what you believe in. That to me is not journalism. That is entertainment. That is it's unproductive. It's unproductive to what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to unite the working class. We're trying to expose the working class to the truth. And if you're going to just mock people, and if you're going to try to censor them from asking questions, you're not understanding the fact that the reason people believe in conspiracy theories, the reason people are so quick to fall for a lot of the delusions and the psyops from the state agencies, it's because the government lies to them, and they know that. That's all they know. And so from there, they can either be educated with the truth, or they're going to be educated with something that's a lie. So why not go into a platform like Rumble, where you're actually talking to people and educating them, and they're opening themselves to content that they may not have heard of before. This is why I'm all for anybody on the left going on Tucker Carlson and talking about, imperialism, or talking about something from a different lens that's not NATO-backed Nomiki Konst or NATO-backed Anna Kasparian, because these people are just going to enter into a screaming match. Anna versus Tucker, or Nomiki versus Tucker. That's all it is. But when somebody like Jimmy Dore goes there, when somebody like from the Gray Zone goes there, when any of us go on there, we're exposing a huge audience, like the #1 watch show in America, to a perspective that may be different than what they perceive a liberal to be, because their version of the left is AOC, and that's not what we consider to be a genuine version of what we consider to be anti-imperialist left. And so that's why we have to do these things, and that's why it's important to speak out against people like Anna, who are manipulating the narrative and framing it in a way that makes us look like we're wrong. And the fact that they mention Rokfin is a really big ups. That means that they're threatened by a lot of us who are using other platforms to pretty much surpass their Google algorithm. Because if you look at who is supported by the Google algorithm, guys, it's usually people who aren't really tackling the heavy subjects. It's usually people who are, especially the Google algorithm, Susan Wojcicki, pro-Democrat. It's people who are attacking Donald Trump and Republicans constantly. Imagine if we did 20 videos of Marjorie Taylor Greene and how awful she is. Like, how quickly would we get remonetized? How quickly would we get into the algorithm? Oh, let me talk about how amazing the squad is. Oh, like the things Joe Biden has achieved. Why Joe Biden has been better than Donald Trump so far. I could literally do all these things, and we could literally have made so much money and be so popular. But what does that do? You become the mainstream media with a brand that says progressive on it, but it's nothing more than superficial. It's just superficial bullshit. That's all you are. You're it's worse. It's the same way I feel about the squad as I feel about TYT and the faux left. It's because like they know what they're doing is wrong. They know that it's not genuine, and they still do it because it's either politically it's politically, it's political capital, right? It's beneficial to them, or it's beneficial to their brand as who they are as this progressive, blah, blah, blah. And they know that they're losing the game. They're losing this battle. And you can tell because of the attacks that have surfaced constantly now from that side. I mean, you talk about Tim Black, you talk about TYT, the Majority Report, all these people, their attacks have leveled up because they have nothing if they don't have the reaction from people on this end of the spectrum that are like, you're a joke, blah, blah, blah. That's all they have left because people are not buying their shit anymore. I don't give a shit if they have 5 million subscribers. Who watches them? Really? Like, I have a fraction of their subscribers, and we have more engagement with our audience because we care about our audience and we care about the truth. And if our audience says, hey, we want to see this, we listen to you. But they don't care. They just look at people as dollar signs. And it's that same concept of oh, who are we? Are we going to look at each other as dollar signs, or are we going to look at each other as like human beings, right? And if you're against looking at people as human beings, people can see through that eventually. Eventually it just becomes very clear, right? There's this whole delusion happening right now where people are deluding themselves into thinking that anybody that disagrees with them on corona is some sort of lunatic. When really just asking a mere question and being suspect is how we've always been about this government and the pharmaceutical industry and all these people that have lied to us. It's logical to feel that way. What's not logical is to pick and choose when you're going to be supportive of free speech or when you're going to be supportive of the government, right? Like it's either we live in an oligarchy and we know that we're being lied to and we know that we're being manipulated, or we don't live in an oligarchy. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, they cheated Bernie Sanders, but they didn't. We have fair and democratic elections, and January 6th was trying to stop that. No, it's like accept where we're at. Because the quicker we accept where we're at and the quicker we can push these people like Anna's and all these people that hate on everybody that's actually trying to unite the working class aside, the quicker we can get shit done. And that's what today's show was about. And I'm glad Jonny brought up that video because, again, we got a lot of pushback when we talked about the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton and all of that. And that video just shows you that what I didn't even get a chance to say is that today people like Anna and people like TYT and all those people would have thrown the YPO out in the street and called them fascists and Nazis and would have never worked with them because they label everybody as a monolith. All the Boogaloo Boys are racist and fascist. All these people are racist and fascists. Red Brown Alliance. That's what they do. They're there to divide us. They're a mask for a friendlier version of the establishment. They're there to replace the establishment. That's why they're fighting and gnawing so violently to stay relevant, right? Because they know their time is up. They know that. So it's a matter of collaborating across all media spectrums, of having these conversations and of having the support of everybody sharing, because we are not in the algorithm. We literally get censored. We have entirely been demonetized on YouTube, and it's not because we're lying. It's because we're telling the truth. And that's the world we live in is upside down. Normally, if it would be the other way around, but no, the left has lost the fight where we used to be anti-censorship. We used to be anti-authoritarian. Now so many of them are embracing this incoming fascism. And Jonny's right. We don't know what's gonna happen. We might shut down again soon. We have to build communities outside of the internet. But while we're here, we're going to go off kicking and screaming. And while we build platforms elsewhere, which is what we got to do, we got to diversify, because again, just like in decentralized organizing on the ground, we have to learn how to do that online. And it's online is and big tech, all of this is new. The revolutionaries of ages ago didn't have to deal with big tech. That they, Lenin didn't have to deal with big tech. I bring up Lenin because the things he was saying are true. If you go to my Twitter, Johnny, really quickly, if you go to my Twitter, I just want to point this out. This tweet from Lenin that I posted last night, because you guys, you don't have to be, by the way, a communist or anything like that to agree with something Lenin posted, right? And I just wanted to point this tweet out. It's right here. It should be like right here. I said, history tells us about the present and warns us for the future. And there it is. And Lenin said, the liberal bourgeoisie grant reforms with one hand, and with the other always take them back, reduce them to naught, use them to enslave the workers, to divide them into separate groups, and perpetuate wage slavery. That is true. That is what's happening right now. Think about this. Think about the incrementalism that our boy Matt Binder was arguing for, right? That they're going to give you crumbs, guys. They're going to give you one crumb here, and then they're going to take it back. And then it's eventually you pretty much get nothing. And then they're using these reforms to continue for you to believe in the system. And the more you continue to believe in the system, the more they say, well, this person's the problem. Look at these right wingers. They're the problem. And the right wingers say, look at this black person, this immigrant. They're taking my job. They're the problem. So you're dividing yourself into separate groups, and you all are still wage slaves to the system of capitalism. And that's what it is. And like I said, you don't have to be a communist to look at that and say, hey, this is this relates to that. In addition to this, though, we have a liberal bourgeoisie working with big tech in the national security state. This is something unprecedented that we're going to have to incorporate, because a lot of people who read theory leave that part out. You can't leave that out. Now this is something we're going to have to deal with, because big tech is the giant that is being used online to silence us. So we're going to have to figure out ways not to just study history and what happened during the times of revolution, but also study how we are going to use that and apply certain things to big tech. And that's one of the things that I think I'm focusing on now, because it's so important that we understand the power of technology. We can't defeat it. Technology is going to continue to develop. What we can do is get in front of it. Be proactive when it comes to technology and how big tech is. Understand that is cryptic fascism being censored and being demonetized. It's a way to cut your hands off, so you stop speaking out. So you have to go work other jobs and not be able to do things like, have a YouTube show or be an independent journalist or whatever it is that you do. Like, they are trying to stop us from doing this, and anybody, whether you're a citizen journalist or whether you just need to get out there and say a couple things, we need your voice. And so in order to stop that, we're going to have to figure out how you need to understand how powerful big tech is and how they're working in coalition with the government and state agencies. And that's why it's not about being a private company, because Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are not just private companies. They're working with the government. That's how they get away with saying, oh, they're just private companies. No, we know that they're working with the government. We know that there's money funneled from the big tech into our government. So those are the things that I wanted to point out, because maybe it will help people better understand why we're so anti-censorship and why we're so, why TYT is so dangerous, because they have this giant platform and they're using it to pretty much be the same narrative as mainstream media.